Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a fun little Coronation Street topic, which is just going to depict some storylines or characters that were scrapped or cancelled and some of the reasons why. Now, admittedly, this isn't going to be a huge one because there isn't really that much stuff that kind of has been touted to have been cancelled, even with it being Coronation Street, but a lot of interesting ones. Obviously, some little kind of roots for the channel. One of the things that helped Watching Walford really take off in December last year was all of the press surrounding Martin Platt's return that never happened. Maybe it wasn't December, but it was definitely later in the year. It was because essentially how it started off was Helen Worth decided to retire. She decided to retire as Gail Platt, and wasn't going to be spending any more time on the show. So for her exit, it was initially conceived that we're going to bring back probably, one of the partners who either isn't dead or one of the partners who did still inherently hurt her a lot, but out of the lot of Gail Platt's dodgy husbands, probably the one that did the least bad. But unfortunately, it all happened very hush-hush. He was recalled in, everybody said, hey, Martin Platt's back, isn't this going to be great? He did videos on set, but very quickly he was whisked away. He was essentially met with an executive who essentially went, hey, so we've received an allegation that you were in some inappropriate conduct with someone. And it was a rumor that was going on. It was a rumor that was kind of mentioned. A famous actor was going to be called in with an allegation of some misconduct. And it would later be revealed that this was to Sean Wilson. And this was to Sean Wilson, who obviously played Martin Platt. And it was a big shocker. I mean, it's even been touted. He kind of talked about it was towards an indecent assault regarding 1997. He said he's since been cleared and no further action will be taken, but his whole world was blown apart. He was set to return to 10 episodes, but 2 weeks into filming his return, he lost his job. It had been hell. He'd received an email from a soap boss that asked for a meeting, and it said, this is to discuss a historic allegation of a sexual nature which has been made about you in the past few days relating to when you were previously under contract for the program. We'll realise this will come out the blue for you as it has for us. And then there was a lot of up and down, a lot of mismatching, and in the end, at the end, nothing has come out from this claim. And obviously they went ahead and brought Jesse Chadwick in for Gail's exit, which arguably made the exit 10 times worse than it should have been. But it was kind of a myriad of a problematic ending for what is a legendary character. So this is probably the most recent and most prominent storyline that was scrapped or cancelled. Obviously, Gail's exit went ahead, but obviously Sean Wilson has not returned since. So, yeah, I mean, this one was a weird one because, as I said before, it came out of nowhere and suddenly he was there and he was gone, and then we didn't talk about it until December, where he did a big interview with the dodgy skin fade. Trust me to talk about haircuts, but yeah, it's just very, very odd, very interesting. And it does suck because it feels like that's the door firmly shut on Martin Platt as a character, because why else would he return? And it's probably the door well shut on Gail Platt's exit, because I highly doubt she will be back, because at the end of the day, we may acknowledge that, yes, she probably did want to retire after doing, 50 years on the... Is it 50 years? Well, she did want to retire in her, naturally, But was it because this was her end goal, or was she just tired of the direction of the show? And I know it's kind of sacrilege to say that, but a lot of us out there kind of question, a bit of A, bit of B. But yeah, so just that's a little teaser. I feel like that's probably the most substantial one. So that one's obviously going to be the main headliner. But let's go to the lovely Coronation, the r/Coronation Street, and let's read this lovely, lovely article. So, what was the cancelled characters and storylines that was originally supposed to happen, but totally got scrapped for reasons? Do you guys wish any of these should have happened in the show? For example, Dennis Tanner was originally supposed to be more dark and ruthless. But due to the actor knowing comedy very well, he was soon toned down to a comedy character in early 1961. Martin Platt was originally supposed to return last year, but it got scrapped. Les Battersby was originally going to have another son. I forgot the name that was supposed to make an appearance in the show and was in prison before they scrapped that idea and made Les finding out he has a son, which is Greg Kelly, made his appearances instead in 1998, so that another son was soon forgotten, unfortunately. What else do you remember that was one of them on the list of those cancelled storylines and characters that were supposed to be introduced that actually happened or taken different directions? Well, any suggestions about this? And obviously, I suppose I will just reiterate though, obviously, this is from Reddit. These aren't gospel. We can't really act on gospel. It's not really how Coronation Street operates. Stop it, Reddit. Blanche was originally supposed to be the street's first serial killer, but the writers decided to change it to Richard Hillman for an unknown reason. I think this is bait. I can't believe this to be true. Imagine Blanche driving Deirdre, Tracy, and Ken into the canal. That is insanity. I refuse to believe this is real. This has got to be bait. Nazi Noof said she killed them with the one-liners instead. Really, Blanche was going to be the street's first serial killer. Wow, I'm surprised I didn't know that. I thought Roy Cropper was originally going to be the first serial killer. Though he was introduced as creepy stalker and a weirdo, and it looked like he was a psychopath and looked quite dangerous. I mean, just following on top of that, it is kind of interesting to remember that Roy was introduced in a much different way than he is now. He was a little bit more threatening, a little bit scarier, and he wasn't really viewed as like a comedy character. But David Nielsen, and once they kind of realized how intriguing Roy was, David Nielsen opted to play him more like someone with Asperger's syndrome or autism, and this kind of resulted in his more timid demeanor. And this honestly kept him on the show, because if he was just how he was when he was introduced, we probably wouldn't have had countless years of Roy Cropper. These don't exactly answer the question, but this time last year, the preview stated Betsy would warn Dylan about Mason having access to knives, but it never aired. She wasn't even in the ep. Some believe it was due to knife crime being mentioned in the news at the time. Seems like a pointless scene, but it was the reason for Dylan buying his knife in the first place. Mason wanted him to get rid of it, and explained why Betsy wasn't angry with him after the death. I know the Jeff and Yasmin storyline was changed due to lockdown. I wish we could have found out the OG plan. I mean, obviously, once again, just speculation. I think that the Jeff Yasmin storyline would have just wrapped up a lot sooner. Just simply saying, I think it simply would have ended sooner, because it had to be dragged out and it had to be hellish, and we still had to deal with a lot of like COVID aspects to it, and it definitely struggled. I'm reading a spoiler about a throuple with Daniel, Daisy, and Bethany. It looked genuine, but maybe it's a fan theory. I don't remember anything like this. I highly doubt they would have done it either way. Yeah. Excuse me. Audrey was originally going to be Jeff's victim of coercive control, but in the end they changed it to Yasmin because the writers didn't think with all the family shares on the show they could realistically have Jeff isolated like they do with Yasmin. That's interesting. I do remember some initial kind of introductions to Audrey and Jeff. They didn't necessarily go in that direction, but we did get some rather chummy interactions with Audrey and Jeff. So I think that's viable. I think that's interesting. I think it's kind of cool. And I still think Yasmin did a good job of it. But I also would have loved to have seen Audrey tackle this as, you know, we have the older actors who don't, they kind of, now once again, this is probably going to sound a bit facetious, but like most of them are treated like, oh, you know, let's have a little day trip to the set. You'll do a few scenes and then you'll leave and it'll be a nice little day trip. Because a lot of them they are getting on, unfortunately. And time is not kind to us all. But I definitely would have been interested because they do tend to try and get Audrey to have a big storyline every couple of years, just to remind everyone that she is still really good. Funniest for me was a writer pitching a global pandemic storyline to McLeod as the part of the big 60th anniversary plot. It was considered too far-fetched and unrealistic. Fast forward a few months to 2020. Although I guess in a sense that was technically never scrapped since Corey did end up portraying a global pandemic, just not quite how the writers proposed. Yeah, this one was a funny one because I remember reading something similar to this. I remember understanding that this was going to be, like I said, it was very heavily teased and I don't remember what they were going to do, but it was going to be a pandemic. And I don't think that they would have had the same scope that obviously we had our pandemic in 2020 and 2021 that changed everything and therefore people had to use face masks and social distance. It will forever be a weird time in soap because it did have to stop and we did get a lot of masks. And it's a weird thing because soaps are never evergreen, but they're also not supposed to be entirely about current living. Like, they are a weird fictionalized version of reality. So when we will look back at soaps in 2020, we will look back and see weird camera trickery, a bunch of face masks. And some people, if they don't know the history, will be like, Mummy, why is everybody wearing a face mask right now? And obviously they sit you around the campfire and go, oh, you remember that bloody pandemic? Well, everything shut down for a while. And it's like, it's wild. It's always going to be weird. Historians are going to look back and be like, this was such a bizarre time in soap. When Tracy was introduced in 2002, it was said she would have an affair with her adopted brother Peter Barlow, which didn't end up happening. This one's a weird one. This one's a bizarre one. I don't really understand. You can't have family. You can't have family getting related. You know what I mean? You can't have, like, yes, adoptive. You can't really be having. I know it's a rule. Typically, it's a rule for life. Even in soap, even when they did Joey and Lauren Branning, it was still weird and gross. You can't have it be adoptive siblings. Like, look, Brookside tried to do it, and it wasn't adopted. It was just genuine siblings. Brookside did it. Nothing else has even come remotely close to trying. Freddie Peacock was originally going to be missing longer in 2007. Sorry, just making sure it's on screen for the shorts feed. Freddie Peacock was originally going to be missing longer in 2007. He's going to be kidnapped and held by the mad childminder. However, just before the story went ahead, Madeleine McCann went missing, so they had changed the story and he found out the next day. This checks out. A lot of soaps are very reticent to even sniff the Madeleine McCann case. There was a very radical producer in the 60s who wanted to do several provocative storylines for the time. A black family moving into the street, Emily Bishop becoming pregnant out of wedlock, and Jerry Booth coming out as gay. However, ITB were worried and axed him quickly. I mean, yeah, in the 60s. Probably not the right time. Jim McDonald's fake Katie story was originally going to be longer, but it had to be wrapped up quickly as he had other commitments. I mean... the gym return with Katie was weird. It was very odd. Right, let me just do a cheeky little Google and say, who is that? Who is Pat Stanaway? Yeah. Well, who knows? Well, apparently that's the thing. I don't know who that is. Eileen was going to fall pregnant with a baby of Pat Stanaway in 2007. Len Fairclough was immediately written out when he publicly criticised the show, directors, producers and writers, and I can't remember which. They then ruined the character's legacy by writing that he died on his way to see a secret family. Couldn't be a soap without being inherently petty. I don't know anything, but I can't imagine the writer's plan for Kylie Platt was to pull Elaine to leave and kill her off. I mean, that's not really something that you could do, and at the end of the day, sometimes you do have to kill a character off in order to make them more iconic. Look at our Craigie Tinker, who is infinitely more enthralling because he died in the line of duty doing what he loved. And even it's a good allegory because becoming a copper was what killed the Craig Tinker character, and ultimately it's what killed the Craig Tinker. It killed him off. Like, it was the death note in the book that was Craig Tinker, and once they made him a copper, the chapter quickly shut on any sort of character development, any storylines, and anything of the like. But yeah, there we are. Do you guys know any cancelled or scrapped storylines that didn't happen or got changed? Tell me in the comment section down below. This was fun. If you want more, tell me in the comment section. But all in all, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.